What is up, Facebook? My name is Connor Schwerdtfeger. I'm one of the staff writers here at CinemaBlend.com. And if I seem excited, that's probably because of what we're going to be talking about today. We are going to be diving into and talking all about, without spoilers, I have to say, Black Panther, Ryan Coogler's Black Panther, the last Phase 3 movie before we dive into Avengers Infinity War. It comes out, today is February 15th. It comes out tonight, so there will be midnight showings, but it officially debuts tomorrow, February 16th. And so, yeah, we're going to dive in to discuss, not any specific plot details, but just what works, what doesn't maybe work, and just sort of the broad strokes. And then after this one, we will after you guys have had a chance to actually see the movie, we will dive in and do, more of a spoiler-filled discussion. But for right now, throw in any questions you guys have in the comments, and let's just dive in. So the first thing I want to talk about is just what this movie is about. And it is generally about, it takes place in the aftermath of Captain America's Civil War, and it is all about King T'Challa, played by Chadwick Boseman, returning to Wakanda and becoming the king, taking his father's place and becoming the leader of the secretive nation. And he finds along the way that being a king is not as easy as maybe he would have thought. And the whole movie is basically him dealing with, the trials and tribulations of serving as not just a hero in the form of the Black Panther, which is, something he had already been doing, but also becoming a political and royal and, a leader of a nation. And along the way, he finds himself faced with a nemesis by the name of Eric Killmonger, played by Michael B. Jordan. And this is where I want to touch on specifically. I think Eric Killmonger, played by Michael B. Jordan, is easily, without question, one of the standout elements of this entire movie. Michael B. Jordan does a great job. He's a longtime collaborator with Ryan Coogler, from Fruitvale Station to Creed and now this. And it's just such a good Marvel performance, you guys. It's so good. He's a physical powerhouse. He's one of the most physically and just emotionally and psychologically intimidating bad guys that we've seen from a Marvel movie yet. He's charming. He's definitely a bad guy. He doesn't have that Loki thing where it's like, oh, this guy's going to turn good and do that anti-hero thing. This guy's pretty firmly a bad guy, but Killmonger's just got this charisma to him, and I think that has a lot to do with the casting of Michael B. Jordan, who's one of, the most charismatic actors out there right now, but you almost side with him at times, even though the things he wants to do are just dastardly and evil. And I'm not going to get too far into his grand master plan, but it's topical, it's timely, and there are times when you might find yourself agreeing with him, and I think that's the hallmark of a good villain. And I want to dive into some questions and answer Henry Stevenson's question. What rating would you give it out of 10? And out of 10, I would give it a 7. Because on our official CinemaBlend review, which we will be including in this post, we gave it a 3.5 out of 5. And that's, let me talk about the good. There's the Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger, which we just talked about. And we also think that the world of Wakanda is something that's really worth talking about right now, because it is one of the most unique landscapes that we've ever seen from a Marvel movie. And this is coming off of Sakaar and Asgard and all that stuff in Thor Ragnarok. Wakanda is in another league. It feels like it belongs on Earth, but there's also elements of Star Wars and mythical sci-fi elements. It feels like a utopia, a human utopia where technology and spiritualism kind of intermingle, and it's very immersed in traditional African culture. The whole idea is that it is a secretive African nation that has been completely untouched by colonialism or imperialism from the West. So it's got this sense of purity, and there's no outside influence. It's its own unique. It's kind of like Themyscira in Wonder Woman for you DC fans out there. It's hidden away from the outside world. And diving into another question, Daniel Chappell, I think that's your name, or Chappelle, but you asked, does the CGI in the film have a positive or negative effect on the motion of the film and the storyline? And that is actually something that I do want to touch on. That is one element of the film that's not great, is the computer-generated effects, because it doesn't detract from the story, like the pacing or anything like that, if that's what you're asking. But the CG does have moments where it's just not up to snuff with what we expect from a lot of Marvel movies like this. There are a few scenes. There's one scene where T'Challa is standing next to a rhinoceros. It's not an action scene or anything, but the rhinoceros just doesn't look finished. And there are a few there are crowd scenes where he's sort of standing in front of huge crowds of Wakandan tribes, and it doesn't really look like there's all those people there. And I think the weakest elements of that are the lighting and the way that a lot of the scenes in this movie take place in nighttime, in the dark, and the Black Panther suit is very dark, and just a lot of the lighting doesn't really work, especially in the ending sequence, which is something we've seen a little bit in the trailers, but the movie obviously fleshes it out a lot more, is the fight between Killmonger and T'Challa. It's in a very dark environment, and they're wearing very dark suits, and the CG just kind of looks a little cartoony and video game-ish. But at the same time, that's not enough to kill a movie. The CGI is good, it's passable, it's just not great, and it doesn't slow the movie down, and it doesn't take away from what is probably the better aspect of the movie, which is just how different it is from the average Marvel movie. A lot's been said about the fact that this movie's culturally significant. It's Marvel's first superhero movie fronted by a black cast and a black superhero. And we've never really seen a movie that deals in the socio-political realm the way this does. Even though Wakanda is so fantastical and it's got an almost alien sensibility to it, a lot of the elements of the story feel fairly ripped from the headlines in a sense. There's a sense of, there's discussion of isolationism in the way that should Wakanda open its borders to the outside world, considering all the turmoil that we see, particularly in like Captain America Civil War with the Sokovia incident and things like that. And we've just never seen a Marvel movie like this. The way it juxtaposes an alien world of Wakanda and gritty realism brought into that world by Eric Killmonger, it's not. I'm trying to think of a way to say this. Like, I think of a lot of Phase 3 movies have done very hero's journey type storylines. Doctor Strange, origin story that sort of builds up that hero's universe. Spider-Man, same thing. It was a hero's journey. T'Challa's already a hero when he enters this movie, so it deals in these higher ideas of race and politics and anything like that. And another question I wanted to address was Anthony Hernandez asks, would you say the use of comedy and serious moments is more balanced than in other Marvel movies? And that's hard to say, just because, what is balanced to the average fan? Because you look at a movie like Thor Ragnarok, I think that was a very balanced movie, but it definitely leaned into the comedy. This movie has comedic moments, but I would say it skews more towards the Captain America, the Winter Soldier level of tone in terms of what it's dealing with, because what everything I just talked about, it's a very serious movie. It deals in very serious topical political issues, but there's also there are moments where characters get a chance to joke, and it's a Marvel movie. It's a full-bodied emotional experience, and the standout for the jokes in this movie, unquestionably, hands down, not even remotely up for debate, is Letitia Wright as Shuri, who is Black Panther's little sister, and she's sort of she's the Tony Stark of that world. She's like the Q for a James Bond movie. She provides him with all of his tech. She's always building new gadgets for him and stuff, and she's just a ball of manic energy. It's the greatest thing. She's got, hands down, I'm not going to spoil it, this is the non-spoiler review, but she has, in my opinion, the funniest line in the entire movie. And if you guys were big on Vine when Vine was a thing, you're going to recognize what the line is. I think she's hands down, she's got a big future ahead of her. She's a young character. I think she's supposed to be 16 years old, and there's a lot of room for this character to grow and become a bigger presence in the Marvel Universe, particularly because with the trailers that just came out during the Super Bowl for Avengers Infinity War, we can tell that she's sort of getting involved in Stark Tech now, and we can see that there's a plan for Shuri out there. We don't know what it is yet, and even having seen the movie, I don't know exactly what the plan for Shuri is yet, but she's got a role in the MCU moving forward, and I seriously cannot wait to see where she goes from here. But moving on from that to another question, Brad Christen asks, who is Ulysses Klaw and how does the movie fit into the Marvel Universe? And that actually sort of ties into what I was talking about at the beginning of this whole thing. which is just the background information leading into this movie. And so for, diehard Marvel fans out there, you'll know Ulysses Klaw, played by Andy Serkis, first appeared in Avengers Age of Ultron. I almost said Infinity War, but Avengers Age of Ultron. And he's a mercenary. He's an arms dealer. And he's one of the only outsiders who's ever actually seen what Wakanda really is. Because to the outside world, Wakanda is this backwards third world country, and nothing's going on in Wakanda. It's not technologically advanced, but Klaw has seen it, and he's got this outsider view. It's I think he refers to it as El Dorado in the movie. Explorers used to think it was in South America, but it's actually in Africa. And he's this menacing presence. He's a mercenary. He's got for those of you, spoiler alert for Age of Ultron 3 years ago, he had his arm ripped off by Ultron, and he had it replaced with a bionic weapon that can fire these sonic blasts, which I'm not huge into the Marvel comics, but my understanding is that's pretty accurate to the source material. And I've been talking a lot about the supporting cast here, but I do specifically want to shout out Andy Serkis because Klaw is so damn good in this movie, you guys. He's one of the most charming villains. Killmonger, I think, is the big bad of this movie, and he's great. But as far as Klaw is he's the Jaws or the odd job to the bigger Bond villain. He's just this scenery chewing, fun. Every time Andy Serkis is on screen, he's a scene stealer. He's one of the best parts of this movie, and I think you guys, if you are fans of his sort of manic energy, you're absolutely going to love what he brings to the table. So my final thoughts on the film are Marvel's Black Panther is a great movie. It's important. It's culturally significant, but it's also not perfect, as a lot of movies are. I think it's 3.5 out of 5 on the CinemaBlend scale, and I think if you're a fan of the Marvel movies and you're also looking for something a little different, maybe a little deeper, then you're really going to love this movie, you guys. So that's my take. But make sure to stay tuned for way more coverage of the movie as it comes out and debuts all over the world over the course of the next few days. And make sure to give us your thoughts on the movies as soon as you get a chance to see it. So thanks a lot, guys. See you next time.